Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Thrive After Sports podcast. If you are tuning in on Author Spotlight, we have a very special guest in the building today. I'm excited to be here with you. This is someone who we've known each other less than a year, but I already consider her a friend, already consider her a teammate as we run on this mission to support the athlete community, specifically the former athlete community. I'm here with Dr. Sarah Lepe. Some of you may know her as Coach Sarah, the founder of Rebranded Athlete, the author of Pivoting from the Game. I know we have a collaboration project, Athletes Entrepreneur, which I'm sure we'll get into. If you're watching this on video, you will see her face right there, looking smooth, looking good. Her chapter is amazing. We'll get to that in a little bit. But Sarah, thank you for spending some time today. How you doing?
Doing great, Taj. Thank you so much. And what a great intro. And it's hard to believe. I know we just met within the year, but I feel like we've known each other forever.
I feel the same way. The feeling is mutual. Most definitely. Before we get into everything you're doing with Rebranded Athlete and the books, you're a 2-time published author now. Before we get into Rebranded Athlete Academy and, before you were Dr. Sarah Lepe, before you were Coach Sarah, you were once upon a time a volleyball player at Cal State Fullerton. Can you just talk to us a little bit about what it was like for you when you were done playing volleyball? What happened when you stepped off the volleyball court for the last time? What happened next?
Yeah, so I'd been a volleyball player for a long time. I was introduced to athletics by my aunt when I was 5 years old, and she was coaching a volleyball team at the time. And that's when I first fell in love with the sport and knew I wanted to play it. I got pretty good in middle school and realized that I had potential to actually go to college, and not only a college, a D1 school. So I was heavily recruited throughout high school, and then many different universities, had reached out. I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go. And I went on one recruiting trip to Cal State Fullerton, and it felt like home. And it's like when you have that feeling and you know that you're around good people and the energy and vibes of a team, like I found my next team, and that's exactly what I wanted. And so my time at Fullerton, I was actually there for 5 years. As a freshman, I was competing for a starting position with other seniors. I had a sweet set that I went up for. It was a slide, and I went to go and hit it. It was a awesome kill, and I came down and I landed on my knee, and I actually blew out my ACL my freshman year. So that in itself there was a really hard transition for me because, I'd been this star in high school. The expectations was that I was going to do the same when I got to college. And then I had to deal with the mental side of being out for the year and not being able to physically be there with my teammates. But I did rehab very quickly. I came back within 6 months and back on the court trying to figure things out. It took me a couple years to kind of find my rhythm again. And then at the end with Fullerton, I spent my 5 years there. I went into college wanting to major in kinesiology. I wanted to be an athletic trainer. And the more time I spent in the training room, especially with my injury, the more I realized that is not for me. So I resorted back to, I think at the time, like what was comfortable for me and what I knew. I came from a family of educators. My dad was a principal. My aunt was too. And I'd always been around the school system. Like even when I was on vacation, I would go to my dad's school and help out the teachers. Like that was just kind of second nature to me. So I decided to major in education. And then I finished Fullerton thinking that I had graduated. And in fact, I didn't. I moved home, and they had just completely redone their grading system. So it was a plus minus system. So being that it was my 5th year, I kind of, had fun the last semester. And I, just went out with my friends and didn't pay too much attention to my grades. And I ended up getting a C-, which doesn't seem too bad. But when you look at it within your major coursework, it's actually a D, and it's not a passing grade. So I went home, I had this huge celebration with my family and friends celebrating this huge accomplishment. I'm going to the mailbox thinking it's going to be my transcript. And in the mail is this letter telling me that we're sorry to inform you, but your degree has not been conferred. You have not graduated. And I lost it, that transition with that. And then trying to figure out what's next, right? Because in my mind, I was moving home. I was going to go to the teaching credential program, and my life was on track. And then this whole derailment, I had to really step back and figure out who am I? Like, I don't even have a college degree. I had a high school diploma, essentially. I couldn't go back to school because I didn't have the degree I needed to take it to the next step. So to make a long story short, I ended up going to a bartending course, and within a week I landed a job as a bartender. And very humbly speaking, I think that job really set me for the course of my life, because it not only taught me like the resiliency as an athlete does, of how you bounce back and you overcome all these obstacles, but it also taught me how to deal with people. And I laugh because, I ended up going in, I finished what I needed to do with the class, and I ended up going into teaching. And I went in during a time when 2008, the recession was happening, and they were not hiring teachers. And because I had spent that extra year, all my friends, all the people I'd grown up with had already graduated. They were already in grad school. And here I am, an extra year in a jersey, and then still not having that opportunity. I felt like I was so far behind everybody else. So it took me, I think, about 6 years from the time that I didn't graduate to getting my own classroom because of the recession and everything that was going on. But it didn't stop me, because I had that resiliency and I had that mindset. I knew the moment that I had my own classroom that I was meant for more. I knew I wanted to help people on a higher level than just the kids in my classroom. And I still remember my first week of teaching, like, how can I get to the district level? Like, how can I have an opportunity to help people on a higher level? And I know that's strange to say, especially if it's your first year teaching, but I already knew like there was this higher calling in me because of the leadership ability that I had and the capability that I went through as an athlete. I knew I could serve people on a different level. So within 5 years, I moved up to being an assistant principal. And then from there, people encouraged me. They saw my leadership abilities and they're like, you need to be principal. And of course, like I told you, I came from a family of educators. I knew what I was getting into because I saw with my aunt and my dad and the stress and everything that came with it. But to have that ability to take it to the next level, that's what I did. And for 3 years, I became the principal of a K-8 school, which I'm very proud to be a part of, because my dad was the one who initially started that school back in 2003. He was the founding principal. And then 4 years after that, my aunt became the principal of that school. And then about 6 years later, here I come. And I started there as a substitute teacher and made my way up to being the principal. So it's a pretty awesome experience to kind of, go forth with all of that. And then here I am today.
Wow. That's amazing, Sarah. There's a lot that I could pull from that. I just want to start with this. You touched on something that you felt inside of you where you felt like you could serve at a greater capacity and have an impact on a broader scale. And I know we're a little biased because you and I are former athletes and we work and coach and help develop former athletes. At the same time, I just think that, and anyone, whether you're an athlete or not listening to this or watching this applies to you too. What I want you to take away from what Sarah is sharing is that if you feel that call, go execute on it, right? Don't just, so many people are feeling stuck in their lives or unhappy or feeling like they're being called to do more, but they ignore the call and they push it off and they push it off and they play small. So I appreciate you sharing that because it really gives an example of what it looks like to be like, I hear the call, I received the call, and now I'm going to go put forth the effort to execute on it. And you didn't stop there, right? Which is, it leads us up to everything that you're doing now. You reached this level in education of, assistant principal, you said, right? That was,
yeah.
Okay. So,
and then principal.
Right. All within 5 years, which, super impressive in and of itself. And then you felt the call again to come back and serve the former athlete community. Can you talk to us about at that point in your life, once you started to feel that call to serve in an even greater capacity, aside from everything you were already doing as a principal? What was that period of time like for you?
Well, I think part of it too is like what drove me is, just like in the game, we have our hecklers, we have our naysayers, people that tell you can't do it, right? And so for me, there were even people that were telling me like, well, you're too young, you don't have enough experience. Because usually like, when you go into administration, you've been a teacher for a long time. And so in the education world, you may not have that same amount of respect just because, quote unquote, you haven't spent that much time in the classroom. But it doesn't mean that you don't have the capability of leading a school. And what I kind of argue about, it's like, I've been a leader since the age of 8. You know, the time that I stepped on the volleyball court for the first time, I've always been, you know, in a leadership capacity or been a captain. And that experience, and that's what I talk a lot about with my clients too. It's like, we have all these experiences that we bring to the table and that we've gone through. But when it comes down to like putting it on paper, we don't have it because we've only done it as an athlete. And what organizations, what companies, what employers look at is your resume, but it's about selling that beyond the court, you know, and being able to express that when you are talking to people about your experiences and where you come from. So going from that, you know, assistant principal and then to principal aspect, it was like, I knew that I could make a difference and an impact. And at that time in our district, they were reconfiguring, and the school that I landed at was turning into a K-8 school. And I was recruited basically as an assistant principal because I wanted to come into a newly defined K-8 school and help them transition. And that school, let me tell you, it wasn't easy. Nothing that I did and nothing through this process, even though it sounds like, oh, it's like picture perfect, like everything, you know, she was a teacher and then assistant principal and principal. Like, I had to fight my way to get there, and I had to prove myself along the way, especially for the people who maybe didn't believe in me because they didn't know me, or they, you know, I hadn't been around long enough. But what I always try to do in whatever job I have is, you know, I roll up my sleeves next to the people I work with. I never at any time, even though I had the title as a principal, I mean, I was out there sweeping, mopping, directing traffic, like you name it, because that's the team orientation. That's the skill set that I learned as an athlete. And I was known as the principal in the district that had that team-like orientation, and everybody enjoyed coming to work and being part of that team, and that not only they were part of it, but everybody had their role, which I think makes organizations really stand out. And how athletes, you know, we talk about life after sports. Athletes are the ones, like, if I could hire an athlete, I will hire an athlete, not just because I used to be one, but because I know what they bring to the table. We're coachable, we're adaptive, we're innovative. We've been in so many situations on the court where we're problem solvers and we have to figure things out. And so, and as you know, right now I'm watching the Olympics and I'm looking at all these athletes who are beginning, you know, either beginning their careers or they're ending it in sports. And you just think about their next steps and what their potential is. And any one of them would be so lucky to be hired at any organization and take it to the next level. Because we just, as you know, Taj, we bring something different to the table. And I think that's what sometimes it might scare people, you know, because we bring that kind of energy out, and it might be intimidating for people, but it is something that I truly believe that athletes have the capability to change the world. We just need to be in the right place at the right time.
All I'm going to say is bars. You can drop the mic on that one right there. There's a lot I could say, but you said it so perfectly. I'm going to just leave it at that. So I want to hear about, after you reached this high level of achievement and took it a step further to become not assistant principal, but the principal. And it's funny how you said you were out there, you know, sweeping or mopping and directing traffic. That, if that doesn't speak to the team mindset, I don't know what does. You don't have to be doing any of that, but there you were, leading by example, not just you know, talking it, but walking it as well. And that's a beautiful thing. You had already reached this high level of success, especially like you say, you come from a family of educators. So for you to become a principal, what is it that had you decide to take the leap into entrepreneurship and start serving in that capacity? Was there a moment? Is it something that developed over time where you were like, I want to go back and start working with athletes? Like, how did this all come about?
Yeah. So again, going back to that mindset of like, I knew I could serve on a higher level, right? So even when I became principal, I knew, okay, I know I'm going to do this for a little while. This isn't going to be forever. What else can I do next to better serve people? So I've had many degrees in my life. I have, you know, and it might be because, you know, I didn't get that degree right away when I finished, but I got my bachelor's. I went back to get a teaching credential, administrative credential, and 2 master's degrees. And then I went back again to get a doctorate degree. And so that's where rebranded athlete kind of came about. So as I was finishing writing my dissertation, and Taj, that's why I was prepped to help write books and do all that, because I had lots of experience writing academia stuff. So writing a book on my own was a lot more fun. But as I was beginning to, write that dissertation and figure out what I wanted to do, I actually began to study administrators who had been former athletes and how their skill set actually contributed to their school-wide success. I did this when I was still an assistant principal, and then I got that principal job. And at the time I was advised, especially because everything that was going on, to kind of switch the course of direction because that study was going to be very long. So I ended up looking at athletes versus non-athletes at a high school setting. And I looked at their Common Core state standards. So I looked at the assessment that they take every year, the CASP assessment here in California, comparing the language arts and math. And what I looked at was specifically was varsity athletes. And of course, athletes prevailed in both areas, and so that kind of triggered something in me again, because I kept going back to that inner athlete in me. I'm like, I've always enjoyed being around athletics. Even the time that I was assistant principal and principal, I was building up the athletic programs. I was like, I really want to go back and help athletes and help people who were like me, because I feel that had I had guidance and had we had conversations even in college about the transition into life after sports, I believe that I would have been more well equipped to deal with some of the, roadblocks that came my way if I had a better mindset and if I had resources. So I started looking at that, and it was just about the time, I believe it was December 2019 when I finished my dissertation. And then I went and started, figuring out what was next. I had reached out to a coach that had helped me with the dissertation. And so he kind of helped me with this process. And I came up with the idea, and this was right before COVID happened. And so when COVID hit, everything kind of stopped. Everybody kind of reevaluated, what was going on in their life. I know I did. And I realized that as much as I wanted to help at the level I was doing at the school level, there were still a lot of roadblocks and red tape as far as things that I wanted to accomplish and the way that I wanted to structure my team and get everything going in the direction that it went. So I started to spend a little bit of time. This became, a little side project with that. That was fun, especially during COVID. And then I just saw the potential, and I started, researching more like, different people. And Taj, I think at that point I had come across your profile and saw what you were doing, and then all these other people. And I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want to do. Like, I want to help athletes on this different level and get them to where they need to be. And like I said before, athletes have the ability to change the world. They absolutely do, if we can get them where they need to be and see that vision. Because a lot of athletes, and even myself, had these limiting beliefs that life is going to get as good as it's going to be when you're on that quarter field, and that's it. And that's going to be the highest point in your life. But what I've come to realize and what I've experienced myself is that that's just one peak. That is just one peak in your life. That is one chapter. That doesn't mean that that's going to be as good as it gets. And I really believe the best is yet to come if we get athletes going where they need to be. So that's where it started. July of 2020 is when I first put up my Instagram and started, getting into it. And I believe it was around October, Taj, that you and I had connected. And, I saw what you were doing with writing a book. And if you ask my husband, I have all these things I said I would never do. I said I'd never be a principal. I said I'd never go back to school. I'd never get a doctorate degree. I'd never write a book. All these things I said I'd never do. And I just pushed myself, and it's not for me because, I can have all these walls of, trophies, accolades, all this kind of stuff. But for me, it's something greater than myself, being able to help somebody get to where they need to be and find out what their passion is. And I can't emphasize that enough, because athletes, I believe, also have the capability to be leaders in any position that they go into. Even for me, I believe any field I would have gone into, I would have been a leader, because that's who I am. So I really evaluated, is this where I want to spend the rest of my time working, in education? Is this, the only corner I want to be in? And the more I started getting more in tune with myself and with this program that I started to develop, the more I saw the capabilities of being an entrepreneur. And I also said I would never own my own business. And here I am, because I just, never thought that would be a possibility. But I'm so glad that, I opened up my eyes, and in a way, COVID was like a blessing. It really did give me time to reflect and see what I really wanted to do with my life.
Wow. You know what's so funny? Just out of curiosity, why did you used to say you would never be an author? Because I used to say that too. Why was it for you that you said that?
I just thought, like, later on you write a book about your life. I maybe I didn't think I was, old enough yet or had any experience yet for it, but it was just something that never really crossed my mind. And I thought it was like a daunting process, but, working with self-published in 30 days and with you guys, I mean, we broke it down, and it's like 15 minutes a day, you can get a book done.
Right.
So I think it's just the daunting process of it, and, not knowing what it really is all about.
Right. It's so funny you say that, Sarah, because I had a similar experience. I might have shared this with you already, but for anybody listening, and I think this is an important lesson we can pull out of this. I told myself that I had the same thoughts. Like, I'll write a book once I'm more accomplished or once I'm older, not realizing that, number one, by writing a book, you get to be a blessing to others, of course, because there's people you'll never reach if you don't write the book, and certain people won't take you as seriously if you don't have a book. It just adds an extra layer to what you're doing, but you also get to be blessed. So you get to be a blessing to others, but you get to be blessed because of all the things that come back to you once you put that information out there, or that knowledge out there, and you're serving people in the form of a book. So once that was revealed to me, kind of like you're saying, I was like, oh yeah, why wouldn't I write a book? And then you also said that you told yourself that you would never start a business or own a business. Where did that come from? Why did you never want to be a business owner?
I think it's probably because my family didn't do it. Like, I wasn't around it. I had an uncle who, he had like his own little small business, but he lived in San Diego. I hardly saw him, so I wasn't really around it. And I think it goes back to like the old values that are kind of instilled in us. And, it's like, okay, you need to get a good job, that pays well, has benefits, like all this kind of stuff, like that stability. And so that was always ingrained in my mind. And I guess being a business owner wasn't something that we really talked about. It was more finding that security of that 9-to-5 job and not really seeing like the possibilities of what I could do for myself. So in the last couple of years, I was able to do that. My husband did own his own business about 5 years ago. And so that was my first taste of it. But now seeing like the coaching aspect of it, it's like the sky's the limit. And I think that's what's so exciting about being an entrepreneur, is that I'm not tied to, this is my job and this is specifically what I have to do. I'm able to be so much more creative now and impact people that I wouldn't have had the ability to do before, which is awesome.
Right. Yeah, that is awesome, Sarah. And I want to pull this out. I don't even know if maybe you realize how impressive this is, but you said July of 2020 is when you actually started the side hustle of Rebranded Athlete, right? It's taken you a little, I guess it's a year exactly, maybe a little less than a year, to turn the side hustle into the main hustle. And I want to be careful with that word hustle, even because it sounds like it's all about you. Basically, what you've done is you've taken a way that you were already serving as principal, and we know you were a leader in that role, but you've taken how you were serving in education, found a way to serve on the side, and turned the way you were serving on the side into a way that you're now serving full time. And you did that in a year's time. And I want people to take that away from your story and be inspired by that, because it can happen like that if you're doing the right things and putting yourself in position and you're serious about what you're doing. It's the people out there who say, oh, I'll never make it, or the people who it can happen for a year for you too, if you're utilizing your time correctly and you're actually putting that passion into it, like Sarah's saying. So I don't know if you realize that, Sarah, but not everybody turns the side hustle into the main hustle in a year's time. So it's pretty damn impressive, if I do say so myself.
Thank
you
you.
know?
Yeah, when you put it in perspective like that, but it's just, I think what pays off in the end is just the consistency every day. And it doesn't have to be, this big daunting task, but like just doing little things every day to get yourself in a position where you're not only going to better yourself, but you're going to better the people around you. And I think that's what makes an impact, is that when you strive after something that is greater than you, that's when you're going to get the results that you're looking for.
Right. I think another thing too, you mentioned coaching. Did you say you had invested in coaching for when you first decided to start Rebranded Athlete? Or
Yeah.
sorry, go
So
ahead.
yeah, so it was interesting. So during the time that I was writing my dissertation, I actually reached out to a coach to help me with it because I needed help with that. And so he wanted to know, he's like, okay, when you're finished, let me know, I want to send you a little something in the mail when you're finally done with your dissertation. And so he was starting his own program. It was like a beta program that he was doing. And it was basically for people who had finished their dissertation and was like, okay, what's the next steps? Because that's what I always thought, right? Like, okay, I'm going to get this doctorate degree and then it's academia. I can go teach at the college level or whatnot. Like I only thought that was my limiting belief about that, is that that's all that was next. And so his program was like, okay, we can turn into a book, a product, service, and kind of open my eyes to that. And so that's where we started to have those conversations. And I did work with him. It was right before last summer that I was working with him for a little bit to kind of like spark this. But as I've gone along, I have, had some mentors and people that I've worked with. And I think that's so important too. And I think as athletes, we kind of get caught up in that sometimes. And I know for me, like even transitioning out, it's like, I don't need help. I can figure this out on my own. And I think at the end of the day, like we all need a coach. When you needed a coach the most as you're transitioning, you don't have one. And so that's why I want to do what I'm doing with Rebranded Athlete. I want to be that coach that I didn't have, that person that is going to help guide you, not figure out all the answers, because that's not what a coach does. A coach is there to help guide you and figure out along the way, what you can do with all that talent and skill set that you have so that it repurposes into something else in life after sports.
Man, Sarah, and see, this is exactly why I wanted to stay on that topic. You're dropping gems right now, by the way. I'm loving it. But see, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I love that you brought up how we all need a coach, because we just talked about a few minutes ago how, it took you 1 year to go full time into your vision, into the business that you have with Rebranded Athlete. It took you 1 year because you had already understood the power of investing in coaching and getting guidance. It took me about 2.5 years realistically to go full time with my business. And I did all kind of stuff in between, working part-time jobs and having to move back in with my parents at one time, and going through all the challenges. Why? Because I wasn't investing in coaching. I was trying to figure it out all on my own. I had good intentions, I had work ethic, I had consistency, but I didn't have guidance. And so once I was able to invest in coaching, and shout out to Darren Palmer, founder of Self Published in 30 Days, once I connected with Darren and he became a mentor, and I invested in coaching up front before I came on board with the company, that's when I was able to go into full time a year later. So my third year going into entrepreneurship, I was able to go into it full time versus someone like Sarah Lepe, Dr. Sarah, Coach Sarah, who was able to do it in a year because she was investing in the coaching up front. So let that be a lesson to you folks. Don't let that go over your head. You're getting a lot of game on this episode right now.
Love it.
Sarah, I want to take it a different direction with everything you have going on. You already have the Rebranded Athlete Academy. We got the book Pivoting from the Game available for pre-order, which is coming up. I think it'll be out probably within the next month or so,
Yes.
depending on when this episode drops. We got to talk about this. What is it that had you already being a published author and having a solo book in the works with Pivoting from the Game? What is it that had you decide to write a chapter and contribute a chapter to Athlete to Entrepreneur? Because your chapter's fire. I'm excited for people to get their hands on it. What is it that had you decide to become a 2-time author by writing a chapter for this book as well?
I think it goes back to like being part of a team. Like I felt being part of a co-authoring project was so awesome because it was not just about me and my story. It was a compilation of many people coming together, and the topic Athlete to Entrepreneur, I felt like at the time I wrote that I was still a principal, and that was a way for me to really tell my story. And I knew the timing of this, you know, was going to be after I transitioned out of being principal and going into my own business. But to tell that story of what really made me go after something like that, and being part of, like I said, not just me, but other people in the book. Like, I'm so excited, Taj, to like read everybody else's stories in there too, just to see like what everybody else went through, because, you know, we're all taking our talents and our skills and we're applying it somewhere else. And just the aspect of an athlete and what they can do as an entrepreneur, I think it's the best role for an athlete, because we're not just put in a box. And I remember having a conversation with my husband when I'm trying to process all that. And at the time, you know, I'll be completely honest, I was looking at other jobs, different things. Because I knew I wasn't fitting like where I was at, even though I was good at what I was doing. I absolutely loved the people I worked with. And for me, I think that was the hardest part for me, walking away from my principal position, because of the team I had built and the people I was around. But to go in and, you know, say like, I'm trying to apply to all these different jobs. I mean, I was even looking at Nike, because I was like, perfect. You know, I used to be an athlete. You know, I know the corporation is awesome. We even went to Portland, Oregon to go visit. Like, I had friends that worked there. We did a tour and everything. I'm like, this is going to be great. And I applied and I applied and I applied, and I kept getting denied every single time. And I was like, you know what? I don't fit in a box. I think that's what it comes down to. You know, I'm trying to like make my skill set fit into all these different realms and jobs. And I'm like, that's not it. Like, I know that I can create something that is going to check all the boxes off for me. So I think being part of that project, you know, really gave me the confidence of what I was doing next, and being able to tell my story, and not just me, but being part of it with so many other people too.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And it sounds like, if I had to sum up everything you just shared, you basically just decided to bet on yourself. And I'm not just talking about the book, I'm talking about everything you've done since you decided to take the leap into entrepreneurship. You bet on yourself. And that's what it comes down to. And I love how you shared that, you know, if you're at a place where you feel boxed in, um, you don't have to stay there. And that's what I want people to take away from this too. You know, you shared earlier, you know, as athletes, a lot of time we go into these environments and we feel like we're too much, or maybe the people around us are making us feel like we're too much. It's not our fault that we have a go-getter mindset. It's not our fault that we want to win. If everyone else is coming in there, you know, dragging from the weekend and, you know, talking about how much Netflix they watched or whatever, and they're just there to collect a check, then that's on them. But it's our responsibility almost, and we owe it to ourselves as athletes to be able to put ourselves in environments where we can thrive. And I had a great mentor once tell me, which kind of like really sums up your story as well. Like, while you're waiting for doors to open up, start working on building your own door. You can always open up your own door if you're the one that built it. So, and that's what you've done, Sarah. And, you know, it's just super inspiring. And that's why I wanted to have you on today to share that. What's next for Sarah Lepe? You know, you've already done so many great things. You've already built your own door. What other doors are you working on building and opening up for yourself in the future?
Oh man, I just, you know, I feel like I'm just getting started, you know, and especially being able to go into this full time, because this was not easy, you know, working a principal job and, you know, being so focused on that, and then doing this on the side. But now I'm able to go into this full time. But so I got my book coming out, you know, later this month. It's finally here. I have the physical copy. So if you pre-ordered one already, they'll be coming out in the mail soon. I got a book event release on August 29th that I'm having here locally in Ventura, California. And next for me is the Rebranded Athlete Academy. I'm going to be launching that again. I'm working with some clients right now, but I'm really looking at the next group and getting them through. And let me tell you guys, we are having some amazing transformations with some of these athletes that are coming through, and just being able to really have that confidence as they go through into their next steps. And that's what my academy is all about. But big picture wise, you know, I see Rebranded Athlete growing. I want a team that's going to be next. You know, I thrive off of that, and I want to incorporate more people within my company. And not only that, but building community. So I'd love to work alongside some people to, you know, do some local meetups and things like that. And, you know, Taj, maybe one day we're going to have a conference or something, you know, I don't know, you know, we can bring people together, but I just envision rebranded athlete, being more than just me and being radiating out to tons of people and getting a team going so that we can get everything going in the right direction.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I'm so excited. And I love how you prefaced all that by saying you feel like you're just getting started, because you are. And it's exciting to see where you're at now and to think about, okay, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. And I'm just glad I met you before you blew up. You know what I mean? I'm like, just so I always tell people, don't forget about the little people who believed in you early on. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that is awesome. Sarah, I know people are taking so much away from this episode. If they want to follow your journey, if they want to tap in with you, if they want to learn more about Rebranded Academy, if they want to listen to the podcast, if they want to get the books, where can you point people so they can follow your journey and get some more of this good info you're sharing?
Absolutely. The easiest way is to go to rebrandedathlete.com. I have everything there. SarahLepeBooks.com is where you can also pre-order. I have a link on my website as well. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Rebranded Athlete. And then I also do have the Rebranded Athlete podcast, which airs on Mondays. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, all the latest places to find podcasts. And, send me a DM, reach out to me. I'd love to hear your story and connect with you guys and see what we could do together.
That is awesome. Sarah, this has been a pleasure. I know we're sitting here recording this right now, but I'm beyond excited to release it because I know people are going to get so much out of it. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate the work that you do for the athlete community. I appreciate you being willing to be a part of projects that I'm working on so we can collaborate together and I can lean on your expertise. Just thank you. This has been phenomenal. I appreciate your time today.
No, thank you, Taj. I really admire you and, you're like one of the pioneers with all this and, thank you for what you do and providing this platform as well for athletes. It's wonderful.
My pleasure. My pleasure. All right. For everybody tuning in, this has been another great episode of the Thrive After Sports podcast and author spotlight with the Dr. Sarah Lepe, also known as Coach Sarah. All her information will be in the show notes. Make sure you go tap in and we'll see you next time. Have a good one, Sarah.
Thanks, Taj.